If you've ever thought about doing a Roth conversion, you're going to want to plug into this lesson where I have a guest on the show to talk about using his proprietary Roth Blueprint software. Welcome everyone to the Retirement Income School. If it's your first time here, I'm Dr. Amanda, and this is your place for financial education to learn how to protect your wealth and create guaranteed lifetime income so you can retire financially relaxed. And today we're going to dive into topics that you're definitely going to want to stick around for. We're going to be talking Roth conversions, the phantom gains problem that happened from the elimination of recharacterization from the TCJA in 2018. We hit on the 4% rule and the sequence of returns risk, highlighting the problem of a volatile market and why it's important to use an annuity in a Roth conversion process. Those are some of the highlights we're going to cover in this lesson with our guest, Steve Hutchinson. Steve has been in the financial industry for over 40 years, and he has recently created software that's specific to helping you with Roth conversions called the Roth Blueprint. And I met Steve in Arizona recently. I went to one of his boot camps to teach advisors and financial planners, retirement income specialists, how to help their clients using this software. That's where we met. And since then, I have helped so many people with his software. So I wanted to bring him on the show to dive into these topics so that we can address conversations about Roth conversions, because it's such a hot topic right now. And there's a lot of urgency around when to do it and why it's important to do it now in this short window of opportunity. So let's start there, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start first. I want to ask, I know you've been in the industry for over 40 years and you have created software that has managed billions of dollars. And so I want to know specifically why you started to be interested in Roth conversions in general.
Well, I have a certain passion for the whole Roth concept because of the uncertainty in the future. And one of the things you can really lock down with a Roth IRA or a Roth conversion is you no longer have to worry about future tax rates. So both my children are in their 20s, and one of their solid financial rules is they're not allowed to put money into a regular IRA, because I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. So my children have been taught from a very young age to put money consistently every year into a Roth IRA so they have certainty as to future tax rates. So if you look at everything that's going on, we have a contradiction happening out there in the marketplace. We have debt that is now at $37 trillion. And that's not what's so alarming as that the debt acceleration is at the rate now of $1 trillion added to our national debt every 5 months. And so it's a little bit like the dark side of compound interest. It's working in reverse now for our country. And it's an inflection point because at the same time, we have this tremendous debt that's building and compounding. We are at the lowest tax rates, basically 50-year low historically in tax rates, with the top tax rate being only 37%. So as you know, Amanda, the Tax Act and the Trump tax cuts were extended, and those are only going to be extended for a maximum of about 8 years, even though they're permanent, because those were using a reconciliation process to get through Congress, which means they only needed a simple majority of 51 votes. Because of some certain reconciliation rules and bird rules, I'm not getting into all the political detail, but in the future, after 8 years, it will require a full 60 vote majority for any tax increases or decreases. So we're at an inflection point because we have essentially what I see as an 8-year window for people to execute a Roth conversion. And it's an inflection point because you have that second chance opportunity to get this done with almost certainty the tax rates are going to go up in the future, probably almost zero chance that they would go down. And we have this 8-year window that's basically protects everybody so they can do a Roth conversion. So about 18 months ago, we really started driving our total focus, and we built our Roth conversion software from the ground up, specifically just for Roth conversions. Most advisors are forced to use software that's full financial planning software, and then that particular company will add a module onto the software for like a Roth conversion module. We built this from day one, from the ground up, to help advisors and professionals, retirement experts work with their clients to execute the most efficient Roth conversion. And we call that a Roth Blueprint when you deliver that to your clients, as you know.
Yeah, it's incredible software. I love that you said that because I have tried other software and it's a side note, the Roth conversion process. And so I love using your blueprint in order to help as the basis and the foundation when I'm working with clients who are especially coming to me for Roth conversions because people are worried about the impending doom of increased taxes and not knowing what's going to happen. You know, my clients talk a lot about the IRMA charges that are coming and the 6 chain reactions that you share with people and that I've shared on my retirement income school. You know, thinking about IRMA, just this 6.5% inflation rate and how Medicare is the number one budget expense. And I just think,
Right.
wow, we are in for a storm ahead if we don't use this window of opportunity. So I really love that you've created the software and it's so easy to use. It's very client friendly. And so, yes, I want to say thank you. And
You're
it's
welcome.
helpful for clients who are coming my way and listening to this right now. I know that we wanted to talk about the 4% rule. I think this is really important because when we think about investment strategies and portfolios for retirement income, I always tell me people that there really isn't a lot of room for mistakes in the retirement era because when you're 30 years old and the market tanks or you make a mistake in your portfolio, you have a lot of time to recover. When you're in the retirement phase, you really don't want to make any mistakes because it can cost you either outliving your money or not being able to have the lifestyle that you choose. And so let's talk a little bit about that and how important that is for, you know, is it smart to use the 4% rule? Why would it work and not work? So let's go there.
Well, there's a couple things to think about. During the average 30-year, 35-year retirement, a retiree can expect to see 5 bear markets or major downturns. And I know there's even strategies for doing conversions during bear markets. The problem is we don't know what the market's going to do. There may not be a bear market. There may be a bear market tomorrow. There may be a bear market with a flat market for the next 10 years. We really don't know what's going to happen. So what you need to do is you need to set up a plan where you don't win 80 times out of 100 or 85 times out of 100. If you're going to play the game, you want to make sure you win 100 times out of 100 during this conversion process. Actually, I can show you a visual on comparing 2 people that are going through a Roth conversion during different markets. And
Yeah, that'd be great.
might give you an idea. So the 4% rule, the concept is you put 40% in bonds and 60% in stocks. And the idea is if you don't withdraw more than 4%, that money should ordinarily last you over a 30 or 35-year retirement. Well, you can't apply a rule that's designed to average out over 30 or 35 years. You can't apply that to a 5 to 10-year conversion window when you're converting assets because the volatility is going to be much more significant and have much greater impact because you're moving money and you're converting it at a larger amount each year than 4%. So I'll give you an example with this. If we take Abigail and Melinda and they have each $1 million in a retirement account that they want to convert. So they're following the 4% rule. They put 40% in bonds and 60% in stocks. They each decide to convert $200,000 a year from their IRA to a Roth IRA. So each year they're going to move from the IRA, 200,000 over into the Roth IRA. So Abigail retires and decides to do this conversion in an extremely stable market. And she enjoys 7 years of consecutive growth, averaging 6% rate of return. So the way we get to this average, Amanda, is we take those 7 years, the returns, we add them up and we divide by 7, and that's the average rate of return. Melinda, on the other hand, she retires and decides to do the conversion in a volatile market. And she suffers 2 years of pretty steep losses, followed by 5 years of more significant growth. But if you take all these returns and you add the 7 returns up, divided by 7, she also averaged a 6% rate of return. So the key thing here is they both retired at different times, one in a stable market and one in a volatile market, but over the 7 years, they both averaged that 6% rate of return. So if you take Abigail, she has $1 million, she takes $200,000 and converts it, and then that's going to generate a tax, and they're both in a 24% tax bracket of 24% times the 200,000. So that's $48,000. So far, so good. All right. So now she has $152,000 after paying the tax, and that's in a Roth IRA, and the remainder is in a regular IRA. Now she experienced 5% growth, as you see over on the left. So that impacts both the IRA and the Roth account. So she gets $40,000 added to the IRA, $7,600 added to the Roth, and everything's copacetic, and we move on to the next year. She has 4% growth and gets the $25,600 added to the IRA, makes another $12,000 on the Roth. And so the balance continues. And so around about year 3, she has about as much in the Roth as she does in the IRA. And this just continues. And we go to year 5, year 6, and by the end of year 7, she's up to over 1.142 million in a Roth IRA. And at that point, the IRA is completely depleted. So the objective when you're converting from an IRA to a Roth IRA is as efficiently as possible. You want to move that money from the IRA over to the Roth IRA. And if you'll remind me in a few minutes, Amanda, I'll draw out a quick diagram and show everybody what is absolutely essential called marginal tax bracket management while you're doing this. Our software does this for you automatically and sets a max tax rate that you don't exceed. So obviously when you're working with somebody individually, you protect them from going above that tax bracket. You also can protect them from needing to use any money from out of pocket to do the conversion. But anyway, let's go back to Abigail and Melinda. Now, if we see we have the average 6% rate of return for Abigail, and we drop over to Melinda, she has the same $1 million. She converts the $200,000. She has the exact same $48,000 of tax liability like Abigail did, but here's where everything changes. You see the negative 31% over on the far left there, Amanda?
Yep.
Okay, so we have the $152,000 after we pay the tax, but now our $152,000 and the money, the $800,000 above, experiences a 31% loss because of the volatile market. So now we're losing $248,000 out of the IRA and $47,000 out of the Roth IRA. So both accounts get substantially hammered. And the next year we have a 16% gain, followed by a 35% gain, a 12% gain, a 13% gain, and an 11% gain. So it's great. We had significant rebound after we had the fall off, but the problem is this. Even though they both average a 6% rate of return, after only 7 years, Melinda ends up with $150,000 less in her Roth account after the conversion than Abigail, which is significant. And what we're really pointing out here is the sequence of returns risk is magnified during this conversion period. Now, if you go back to 2018, there used to be something, Amanda, called recharacterization. And what it basically meant was you could undo, you had kind of an undo button for Roth conversions if you didn't like the way it was turning out. So in other words, if you lost money up to 21 months after you converted, you could push this recharacterization button and basically undo it. And so that was great. But with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act in January 1st, 2018, they eliminated the undo button. And so essentially, the problem is once you convert funds now, from this point forward, the decision is irreversible. So if you make a mistake, you do a conversion, you decide you want to take a lot of market risk, you do that conversion, and it goes sideways on you, you're basically going to suffer the loss and have what we call a phantom gains problem. So first we have to define a phantom gain. A phantom gain is when you pay taxes on money that no longer exists. You basically have lost the money. So if we go back to Melinda, her IRA, she converted $200,000 from the IRA over to the Roth IRA. So everything's great, but then she had that $62,000 loss because of the 31% drop in the market. So we have $62,000, leaving her with $138,000. So even though she only has $138,000 now in the Roth, she had to pay tax on that $62,000 a gain that's no longer there. So she had to pay taxes on an extra $62,000. And the bottom line is avoiding losses during this conversion is absolutely critical. So one of the things the Roth Blueprint does is enable you to do the conversion without any out-of-pocket cost, without jumping tax brackets, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and avoiding these losses, which is absolutely critical. So during that window, and I know you do this when you're working with clients, during that window, you want to make sure that that downside is protected so you don't have that phantom loss problem, on top of being able to keep them from needing to use out-of-pocket money and protect their jumping tax brackets.
Okay, Steve, you just said so many important things. And, some people are listening on the podcast, some are watching on YouTube. So I want to summarize this a little bit because you made some points that I think are critical. First, when we think about the sequence of returns risk being magnified in the early years of conversion and in the early years of retirement. So what you're saying is critical in that you do not want to be doing a conversion in a volatile market. And so we've created a way to help you do the conversion without having to be in a volatile market, even if the market is volatile. So I think that's very important to understand, that you want to put yourself in a context where you can have safe returns. And, they're not going to be 32% gains, but you're never going to have a loss. So you're never going to have that phantom effect. And I want you to talk about this a little bit. I think it's important to point out, when you talk about that phantom gains problem, it's really a double negative consequence. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
it's wild to think about how important it is not to lose money during the conversion and not to lose money in a volatile market.
Well, people think that they're diversifying and they're using, rules designed to give you protection over a 30-year period. Those same rules don't apply when you're doing a conversion and you're moving as much as 20 or 25% of that account every year. You're not just withdrawing 4%. So it's not the 4% rule. You're going way outside the lines on that. And people don't realize that they're taking significant risk. Just over that 7 years, that 150,000 that Melinda lost, that's going to mushroom into a 7-figure loss over her lifetime, because she chose to take risk maybe for an extra 1 or 2% potential gain on the upside by hoping that it remains a bull market. Remembering, once again, we're all going to experience on average 4 or 5 bear markets during our retirement. We don't know whether that bear market starts tomorrow, in 2 years, in 3 months, in 10 years, or never. You just have to protect the downside when you're moving through this conversion process. So this enables you to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Will you go back a few slides to where you're showing Abigail's gains? So it's back to the beginning. I'd say I want us to look there, because as you were going through it, I want to point out to people the returns that she has to get to the average of 6%. There you go. Okay. So when you have this slide up, and let's say for people who are listening instead of watching, what Steve has here is he's showing Abigail has a gain of 5%, 4%, 6%, 5%, 8%, 7%, 7%. And you might be thinking, well, how do I get that lack of volatility? How do I control that? Because that's not controllable usually. But I want us to talk about how we can use a simplified accumulation annuity to create an environment like that, instead of being subject to volatility and having these problems in an unstable market. So can we go there now? Because, I think it's important to consider, how do you get that average 6% return instead of having potentially a 31% loss and then a 35% gain that doesn't actually offset the 31% loss. So you need to create a stable market in retirement. And that's what we're creating by using a Roth Blueprint and using a simplified accumulation annuity.
So, essentially, you have the period here. We'll go 5 or 6 years out. The way a simplified accumulation annuity works is you'd actually get a 0 during that year. And then the next year, she went down another 14%. You would simply get another 0 for that year. And then the next year, when the market rebounded and went up, instead of starting from down here and having to retrace that, the way a simplified accumulation annuity works is it gives you about 80% of the upside. So let's say the next year, the market went up 10%. The way a simplified accumulation annuity would work is it'd give you roughly 8% of that gain. So you got a 0, 0, and then an 8% on that third year. But these zeros, instead of going down and then going up 8 and then still being underwater like Melinda was, you're already at an 8% gain. So if you were to end right there, you have an 8% gain. And then if the next year it went up another 5%, that's on top of that. And then if the next year the market dove and went down again, the simplified accumulation annuity would just go straight across, and it would lock in the values. So each year it basically stair steps and locks in the values, and there's no such thing as a downside when you're working with a simplified accumulation annuity. And so the idea is you're hedging your bets. So maybe for giving up a couple points of potential on the upside during that 7-year conversion, you eliminate the possibility of having that $150,000 hiccup like what Melinda went through.
That is awesome. Such a great visual. I think that's important for people to understand, because I hear people all the time say, well, it's a 6% average return. But those numbers look a lot different in different markets, and it's critical at this time in retirement specifically. And so having that simplified accumulation annuity to protect from downside loss, but give you the potential for gain, is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You wanted me to remind you to talk about marginal tax bracket management. So when we do a Roth Blueprint, we're always doing this in a year-by-year process, thinking about your tax brackets and your time horizon, the amount of money you have, how much time you have to convert, what age you have for your RMDs. And so we want to be managing tax brackets. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. If you look at the marginal tax brackets, you have 10%, 12%, 22%, and then 24%. We'll start around the 24% tax bracket. I happen to know off the top of my head that the top of the 24% tax bracket for a married filing jointly couple is $394,600. All right, so the trick to this is you want to be able to piecemeal your conversions, and the Roth Blueprint, the software actually calculates all this for you based on taking into account your Social Security income, the increases, your standard deductions, your senior deductions, the new $6,000 Trump deduction. It takes all that into account, and we create what's called a baseline, and the baseline is a realistic snapshot of what your income is going to actually be during the conversion period. So let's say your income, with everything all considered, let's say it's $200,000, just to keep the example simple. So you have $200,000 is your baseline income. That has you in the 24% tax bracket, but the top of that bracket is $394,600. All the marginal tax bracket management means is that we have the difference between the 200 and the 394,600 that we can convert each year. So that'd be 194,600. And so the software would say, okay, in that year, we want to convert 194,600. We want to pay the tax on that, whatever the tax amount is, and then the balance gets converted to a Roth. You don't have to use any out-of-pocket cost whatsoever. We do it all internally within the actual IRA contract. What we're finding out there is that a lot of people are IRA and 401k rich, and they may have $700,000-800,000 or more dollars in their 401k or their IRA, but they may only have $100,000 or $150,000 in external funds, and they don't want to give up all that external money for the purpose of doing the conversion. So they're basically stuck. They have to either give up their lifestyle, not be able to help their kids through college, not be able to take the summer vacation, redo the cabin, fix the kitchen, all the things that they have planned as part of their retirement. They say, okay, do we sacrifice that to do the conversion? So the question you need to ask yourself is, okay, if I work with Amanda and she uses this process in the Roth Blueprint, if I can take, let's say, $500,000 IRA, and without utilizing any money from another pocket, without increasing my tax bracket in any way, shape, or form, and without ever reducing the balance of that 500 below the 500, everything's self-contained. Is there any reason that I wouldn't want to go from taxable to tax-free? And what we find is once people understand this process and get comfortable with it, there absolutely is no reason not to go tax-free, because as you know, Amanda, the 6 chain reactions from those RMDs, if you follow the government's plan, you're going to end up spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars more over your lifetime by remaining in a traditional IRA.
So powerful. I love the ease of the process by how we can manage those marginal tax brackets and the choices that it gives people. So when I'm running blueprints with clients, it takes literally seconds to just change the tax brackets and run a different blueprint for them to show them, here's what would happen. It might extend the timeline. It might reduce the taxes. Maybe you have a sale 1 year of a property, or you have more interest gain coming in, and it changes your income. And so it's really an easy software to work with to help people understand that a Roth conversion is a doable, friendly, easy process, as long as you're working with someone with this Roth Blueprint software who can help you. So I do want to remind everyone, if you want me to run a Roth Blueprint for you, just go to retirementincome.school. You'll see a button at the top of the page that says book a Q&A call. We schedule an appointment and I run a Roth Blueprint for you. So if you've watched other videos of mine, I've run through why it's important, the 6 chain reactions that Steve talks about, and I show you why it's critical for you to consider doing this soon in this window of opportunity that you have when we do know the tax brackets. And this is all coming from Steve. I was so fortunate to run into him and learn this process and understand why it matters for people who have those larger IRAs. It's really critical to consider what's going to happen for you down the road. One thing I've really noticed a lot of times, Steve, is when I'm talking to clients who have, let's say it's a married couple, they have a spouse who really likes to invest a lot and the other one doesn't. Usually it's, let's say the husband, he likes to invest and he doesn't realize what's going to happen, especially if there's an age gap in the relationship, when he passes and the widow's penalty hits her, and she also doesn't know how to invest all that money that he's been investing. So to me, that's another huge benefit of this process, is the ease of using an annuity to do the conversion, because really it's in a lot of ways set it and forget it, other than deciding how much to convert each year. So say a little bit there about the power of annuities in general. Sometimes people hear the word annuity and they think, I don't want to talk about annuities. And I think that's a mistake. And I want to hear from you why that's a mistake.
Well, especially annuities during that conversion period, but you also have the ability to do some things with annuities. I have a lot of clients that maybe they don't even have children, and they want to convert their IRA, and they want to remove the possibility of running out of money. Well, the only thing better than not running out of money is never having to pay tax on that income. So basically having a pension that's tax-free, guaranteed for the rest of your life. And a couple age 60, there's a 43% chance one of them will make it to age 95. There's a 20% chance one of them will make it to age 100. Well, only by using a pension, which is now basically only available through an annuity, can you guarantee that that income can last to age 100 or whatever age that you live to. And with interest rates and treasuries as high as they are right now, we have the highest guaranteed income payout factors I've seen in the last 30 years. In fact, I've never seen them this high. So that means you can get more guaranteed income proportionally through this process than any other way. It's not even close. So if you want to have something that you can just do the conversion, set it and forget it, and absolutely never run out of tax-free money, then an annuity is the only tool that you can do that with. On the other hand, if you're very market oriented and you want to be in the market, in a period as short as 5 to 7 years, you can execute a conversion without any risk of downside. And so you have a little bit lower potential return during that conversion window, but you eliminate the possibility of getting wiped out like Melinda did in that previous example. Then you can take your money and flip it back over into the market if that's what you want to do for the rest of your life. But during that critical conversion window, you can't apply long-term risk strategies like the 4% rule. No diversification strategy is going to protect you during a 5 to 7 year Roth conversion, especially with no more recharacterization available. The government is continuing to stack the rules in their favor, and eventually they'll close up all the windows and the doors, and they may make it even harder to do a conversion. Right now is the window. We have a total, basically, inflection point where we have increasing debt and a very, very low tax rate. Now is the window. You're going to look back. If you don't look at doing a conversion now and you don't start it soon, you're going to absolutely regret it.
Mic drop. I don't think anything else needs to be said. Thank you. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your wealth of wisdom and creating this software that's helping people do Roth conversions effectively. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else that you would want to add before we wrap up?
Nope. I think now's the time to get serious about this. You have a window.
All right. Thank you, Steve. For those of you still here, thanks for being here. If you have not yet subscribed to the show, do so now. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss out. And go to retirementincome.school to schedule a Q&A call. This is a short call that we'll have to see if it's a good fit for us to run a Roth Blueprint. If it's not, hey, no harm, no foul, move on, and we'll part friends. If it is, which I have a large number of people coming to me from the Retirement Income School saying, hey, I want to run a Roth Blueprint, and they are very surprised by the outcome. And so go to retirementincome.school, book a Q&A call. Until next time, continue to stick with me here at the Retirement Income School, where I'll help you keep your money safe and make it last so you can enjoy retirement. This content is for educational purposes only and is not financial, legal, or tax advice. Always consult a qualified professional before making decisions about your retirement.